When I was inspired to create my show, I had several goals: to connect people more deeply to themselves, and to bring a little more joy into the world by building room for it each day. I was also eager to tell the stories of people who have gone from tragedy to triumph, sorrow to success, victimhood to victory, hopeless to hopeful, and more. Why Not Me is an ongoing series on the real and the woo that helps illustrate how our worst moments may become, over time, our biggest gifts. Join my very brave guests and me as they tell their unique and very personal stories while helping connect us all in understanding the adage, life happens for us, not to us. Why not me? Well, why not you? Let's get on with it, shall we?
Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern, and this is a segment of Why Not Me? I'm sitting with the beautiful and amazing Penny Fisher, who has quite a story to share. She is going to be talking about her new book, Aftershock, and I'm going to let you take it away in just a moment, but I want to let everybody know this is a full circle moment for me because you and I go way back to the yoga mat, way back from when Pam owned Healing Power. And we were both regular yoga people there. We've shared some common friends over the years. Not sure we have kids the same age, I don't know. But you're someone I knew, and then I knew what happened. And it was quite shocking and quite scary. And then I saw you come back to the yoga mat. And I think it was the class I was teaching. So it was several years after your event when I was honored to have you walk in and do your best on the mat at the time. And I'm sure just reading a little bit of blurb about you, you've managed to do quite a lot more since then. So just to set Penny up here, she was on vacation with her family when she became ill, and urgent care read her temperature at 104.5. And long story short, they put her in an induced coma. Her husband and her kids pretty much said goodbye. And through that, she discovered she was suffering from toxic shock syndrome and lost several limbs, fingers, toes, legs. I said, yeah, and has made her way back in a way that I really wanted to share on this segment specifically, because to the untrained eye and the inexperienced person, just seeing your story on paper, they would be like, oh my God, how did she ever even manage to reemerge in any version of herself? So Penny Fisher, thank you so much for joining me today. And I'd love you to take it away. And I was going to say to you, I just want you to start any place on your journey that you would like to start with. You know, I know some people probably want you to go from point A to point B, but with my guests and how I arrange my show, I just want you to go with your first gut intuition of where you just want to start.
Okay. How long do we have?
As long as we want.
All right. So this is my book, and it's called Aftershock by Penny Fisher. It says reinventing myself one piece at a time. And I felt compelled to write the book because I did make a miraculous recovery by anybody's standards. This was 16 years ago. Like you said, I felt very ill. I was on vacation. There's 3 stages of sepsis, and I had the septic shock. And it's funny because I'm on a board of sepsis survivors. And I just heard that when Madonna took time off, she was suffering from sepsis, but she didn't go into septic shock. But she was very sick and like in a coma for a few days. It's wicked, and it will take anybody down. The strongest people alive will be taken down by sepsis and septic shock. So what happened to me, and we never knew exact origins of why I got toxic shock. It was not from a tampon. It was a strep virus. So it's that flesh-eating bacteria got into my body and it was taking over. And I definitely was not taken seriously at the emergency room. So that virus ruminated in me and really is what caused me to lose the limbs and the eyesight. And I was in a coma on life support for over 3 months.
Were you still down where you had fallen ill, or you were flown back here, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was still in the coma. So I fell in the coma when I was there, induced the coma because I was in such dire straits. And I would say within 3 weeks, they flew me back to Northwestern. And then I moved around until I woke up. I remember waking up. So it was like 3 months in, and I was in a Christian hospital, I think called Holy Cross, right off the tollway here in Chicago. And what their specialty is they do a trach, and I couldn't breathe on my own. I couldn't do anything on my own. So the reason I wrote the book, I was keeping a diary, even though I couldn't really write because my fingers were missing. I just was keeping everything in my mind. And when I did have time, I wrote things in my iPad.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came time to write the book, I put everything together with the editor of the book, the publisher of the book, and we made a timeline out of it and then a story. The reason why I spelled it out in such detail of what I went through was not a poor me at all. It was more to show you the world what you can and will come back from with a positive mental attitude. And I would say faith in yourself, not just faith in God, but faith in yourself, that you're going to pull through and you're just going to learn the ropes. If anything has taught us that, I've been watching all the interviews with the survivors, and you can and will be able to pull through if you talk to yourself every day and say, you've got this and you'll figure it out. So what I came back from was I couldn't even sit for more than, I'd say, 30 seconds because my muscles were so weak from being in a coma for 3.5 months. I wasn't moved. My head had a lesion all the way back down to my brain because I wasn't moved for 3 months. There were so many things to get over.
Isn't that supposed to happen if somebody's
They were so afraid to turn me because touching me, like they were afraid to even touch me. I was really,
Wow.
I mean, I have the near-death experience, and I wrote about that separately. I wrote a separate piece about it because it was such a profound experience, crossing over and knowing, what you feel like when you're about to die or when you did die. And I think that was the biggest gift of the whole terrible experience. Was the two biggest gifts were knowing where you go and how you go, which is unbelievable and rapturous. I truly believe that you can relax knowing your loved ones go to a better place. You'll just miss them very much. That's number one. And number two, I think I learned how much I meant to the people that I loved. Like when I woke up from that mass coma, that long coma, there were notes written to me, and it was kept in a box, and my sister-in-law presented it to me, and I took like 3 days, and I had the nurses read it to me, and they were all crying and we were crying. But it was really special to go to your own funeral and be able to know, what your life and what your trajectory actually meant to people.
Yeah.
It's really pretty insane.
So I actually just made a little reel about that very thing, about how we really won't know what people will say to us when we go. So we just want to do the best we can to hear those things from the people on this side while we're here. And so
it gave me like a different confidence that I never had.
Right.
Inside my head that was critical of myself just has never reappeared, because when you know how deeply you're loved by most or all, not even just friends, I'm saying like doormen or teachers or people who said I just was nice to them when they were having a bad day and I didn't even know that I meant something to these people. I think that has given me a lot of confidence to go forward.
That's tremendous. I want to just pause for a moment because I didn't know about your NDE, so I do want to get there.
Okay.
You're touching on a bunch of things I wanted to ask you down the line, so I'm just going to slow us down for a moment, because I first want to ask, how long did it take you to decide to write your book, and how long did that process take? So were people encouraging you to write about your story, or you were just kind of like, I know at some point I'm going to do it?
I thought it was very dramatic what I had been through. I thought it was heartwarming, and that it could teach a lot of different, lessons in humility. Nobody stopped me from writing it, but people just wanted me to get well. So they weren't saying, yeah, write the book. They were saying, just get well, and whatever you can do, you can do. It took me at least 10 years to get the book published. Because like I said, it was all like journal entries. And then it took a long time to get that to streamline into a story.
So your right hand is your hand that is
Both hands are,
without
you
a lot
know,
of fingers, right? Oh, were
yeah,
you right-handed initially?
yeah.
Okay. Have
And
you
I can
learned?
still use it, and I have prosthetic fingers. And when I go out and stuff, I mean, I think they look a little odd, but it pretty much looks like the real thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing.
You know,
Um,
I can use everything. So it's funny that you ask that, because every little, and people talk about this that make big recoveries. Like, you take so much stuff for granted, like breathing on your own, drinking on your own, sitting
mhm,
up, grabbing things. Like, I had to relearn how to grab a penny. I had to relearn how to put a fork to my mouth. I had to relearn how to walk,
mhm,
talk, sit up. You know,
right.
it's a long way back.
So
You're like a newborn chick.
you're the newborn chick. So you were in your coma.
Yeah.
Um, at what point that you came out of it, were you aware? First of all, toxic shock back in our day first came on the scene because of tampon toxicity. So how were you sick? Like, how did you get and
You know, it's
contract?
funny. I mean, I'm telling you, I had hundreds of specialists in and out of my life for that many years I was recovering, and nobody really came up with an explicit answer.
Mm,
My estimation is that I tore like a lining inside my body, and it got infected. We were traveling. I
mm,
did have my period, and I took a tampon out of my purse, and the paper was torn. And I remember saying to myself, it's probably not a good idea, but I don't want to bleed everywhere. And then it was not even it was a very light period. So
mhm.
I jammed it in there, and I'm sure something got into my system from the bacteria.
Yeah.
Toxic shock is a catch all phrase from when your body shuts down and goes into shock. Anything can bring it on if you're terribly sick. So the tampon was just a way that, like, some of the infection would get into your body, but it wasn't caused by the tampon per se.
Right, right. I mean, my mom from a hip surgery at one point became septic. So anything that's introduced obviously can create it if it's a perfect storm, unfortunately and fortunately. So this segment, like I said, is the why not me. And the reason I have this is because, again, going through what you went through, it would be easy and normal to say, why me? Why me? Why did I go through this? And so I would like you to talk about when you went from, if you did, that mentality, and how long did it take you to shift into where you are now, which is, I might not know why this happened, but because this happened, I now am a different version of myself. I have more compassion and love for myself and others. I
Yep.
am more able to receive and hear how valuable I am to others. When we're walking around in our day, we don't always think that way. So I'd love you to talk about that transformation, if you could, for a little bit.
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, like I said, finding out how much you mean to people and how much people love you and admire you is a huge, I mean, obviously it's a huge, probably that's what we live for in a way, is like to please the people we love. So that's number one. Number two, I do believe that the near death, I mean, I've heard that before. The near death experience gives you a certain sense of calm and knowledge about the greater universe in a
Mhm.
way. I don't know. What I
All right.
do know is I'm the kind of person that always wanted good things to happen or have a great life, or, we all imagine what our life is going to be. There was no way I imagined being a disabled 50-year-old getting divorced, but
Mhm.
I have a tendency to spin the narrative to myself to make things more positive so I can move on with it. So, meaning, when I walked out of that horrific situation, I clung on to the two good things, which is what I told you. I know what I mean to people. And I got to see what the near death experience is,
Mhm.
which is really a beautiful thing. And it
So
is
let's
enlightening. I
let's
mean,
talk about that. So can you highlight or illuminate for the listeners, just what you said, that we can demystify it and take the fear out of it if we know that where we go is a beautiful place, and although we'll be missed and we'll miss people that are on that side, would you like to discuss any details about your experience?
yes. And anybody who's interested can message me, because I really wrote it in depth summary about it. But
Mm,
I would say that once you let go, I think it's a hard journey, just like life. you go through a lot of stuff, and I've read a lot about near-death experiences, and I was definitely holding on for dear life. And I was also in pain, even in my coma. Like I felt the stomach pain. I knew what was happening, and I heard people talking, and I knew the situation was dire, but I didn't know exactly what was happening. So I would say that, I don't know, like once I finally let go of the fear, then there was a rapture that I had never felt. And it was like maybe a tiny millisecond of, wow, I'm going to ecstasy. And then it kind of died down. Like I came back and I wanted to go back there. I kept asking people, what chapter were you guys reading me of the book? Because everybody who came into my room while I was in a coma saw that I had the John Lennon book that I had just bought sitting next to me. So the person that was reading to me from that book while my numbers were going down saw my numbers resurge after they read me a certain chapter. And the certain chapter was about a peaceful being that was transcended everything, transcended earthly desires, just was like the best presence, It was like a Christ-like figure, just to be in that circle of goodness and calm and everything, like everything just slows down and is glorious, and the colors are brighter and the music is bright. I could see why people think they can get it through drugs or whatever, because it's so divine. That's the only way I could say it. But it didn't last long enough. And I guess if it would have lasted longer, I wouldn't be here talking to you.
Well, right. But did you hear, like, sometimes I've heard, that you are given a choice to stay or go. Did
in a
that
way,
happen?
I did get that choice, because for the longest time when I was in the coma, I was alone. I was like a lone entity. And then when I was about to go with these men to a place I didn't know, I realized I had kids, and I said, wait, can I stay back with my kids? And then they just snapped their fingers and I came back. So it was definitely the recognition that I want to stay. I have more to do. I have to raise my kids.
And how old were your kids at the time?
I think 6 and 8.
Okay. And so how are they now? And how, have they grown up with this new version of their mommy and embraced that journey for themselves?
I mean, we have a great relationship, the three of us. I have a boy and a girl. My boy is now 25. My girl's 23. And we're very close, and we have a great relationship. They did tell me that they've never remembered me not being disabled, which I hate. I'll never forget, my girl was afraid to see me because they brought her to the hospital too soon. And that took
it's traumatic.
Yeah, that traumatized her. And also, too, I had to win her back, but it was a very short-lived moment, and we, fell back in love immediately.
Can you just, if you'd like to expand on that a little bit, was it because she was in fear of damaging you more, or like how kids
she
can
was
think...
brought into the hospital when I was still recovering, so I had tubes coming out of everywhere.
Just visually scary.
And, I look like myself now, but imagine me 50 pounds thinner, bald. I wasn't myself, and it scared her. And whatever hair I did have, which was only in the front bangs, they were gray. So I looked like I was 100 years old. She didn't recognize me. Most people that came in said I was unrecognizable. So it was scary for a 6-year-old that loved their mom and looked up to their mom.
Yeah.
And Ross, my son, is a little like me. He can spin the narrative with the best of them. He's like, this weight loss made your big eyes bigger. And oh, you look cute with short hair. I've never seen you with short hair. I was bald. I had like a huge scar, lesion. But it was very quick that they embraced me, and we never looked back, really. My son, I'll never forget this was dumb because it cost me a lot of recovery, but I didn't know what my limitations were, and I have a tendency to just push the boundaries. That's probably why I got sick in the first place. And my son said, can we take a bike ride today? And it was like I had just gotten my prosthetic. So I was like maybe 10 weeks out from surgery, being amputated. And then we took like a 5-mile bike ride. And I came back and my foot was swollen and filled with black disease and pus. Like maybe my gym shoes rubbed it, and I was too fresh from the surgery. And my surgeons were yelling at me, like, who would even take a bike ride at that point? But I had something to prove. I was like, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. And they're like, we wouldn't even think to tell you because nobody would do that.
They hadn't met you, clearly.
And in my book, I have a picture of myself, like literally within weeks of getting the prosthetic, trying to play tennis on the court. So here I could barely stand on my own, and I was like hitting the ball. So I had a lot to prove. I wanted to go back to normal.
So on that, because I wrote a question down about this, going through what you went through, it was in the newspaper, right? Everybody knew your
It
name at
was
one
in the
point.
newspaper. I didn't
Yeah, whether it was like the Pioneer
local.
Press or whatever it was. I think this is even before like Facebook, I want to say. I can't remember.
Was it in the
16 years
newspaper
ago.
while I was still in coma?
Probably. I
Oh,
vaguely remember an article coming out. Again, it might have just been the local paper, right? For our communities here. But people talked. Obviously, you were in yoga, then you weren't in yoga. And then it was like, oh, did you hear what happened to Penny kind of thing? And just in the work that I do now and the people that I've spoken to also, and you fall into this category, the reemergence, the spotlight on you. And I know just from hearing you now, you've got a lot of balls and a lot of gumption, and that serves you. And it also, in my opinion, is sometimes a crutch that we use to just get over something without really dealing with it. I'm not saying that's necessarily you, but that first step out in public, that first trip to the grocery store, at what point did you move from feeling like you had to prove stuff to just really allowing yourself to get to know the body you have and its limitations, despite how you felt about them? Because none of this was wanted, right? You didn't ask for this. But now you are here. I know I read you were a model and now you're back to modeling. So
I'm not modeling enough. So if anybody needs,
yeah, it's beautiful. But so
thank you.
like, can you talk
I
about
wrote in to be a disabled model, and they
Mhm.
said I didn't have the right look. And then I looked on, and they were like, they wanted people to look scary. And I don't think that's right.
That's not right, because you're a regular human who happens to have a
Yeah,
disability. You're going to find the right people who are going to meet you where you're at.
I hope so.
I hope so too. It's like a Dove commercial, like a real authentic body that's beautiful and might be missing a few things, like, right? I think it's hard for people who are not living the life you're living, visual, like you described your daughter freaking out at you, the looks you might get from people, the misunderstanding, and that people in their own fear. You talked about the support system you had. I'm going to talk about your relationship with your husband, but the relationship also with other people. People often say when you're in a coma or you're in the hospital, that's when you really figure out who your friends are.
I had
So,
so many. It was like, that wasn't my problem.
okay. So,
I was going to say, like, try dating. Like, that's my book was sad, but it was funny. Try dating with like your fingers falling off. I mean, it was any woman at 50 that's getting divorced after, almost 20 years is going to feel insecure and then add on to all the stuff. But I had so much self confidence in myself. I was like more than the sum of my parts kind of thing. And I've had 3 boyfriends since the disaster, and they seem to love me more than before. I seem to be more appreciated. So maybe I just came into myself more. I really am a believer that everything happens, like literally there's a divine plan. And maybe I was meant to do this because I was already a little fearless and a little cocky and a little confident and had the right tools to deal with it. So I do wonder if there's a divine purpose. I do think the only thing that has calmed me down about the whole thing is I think that we're here many times,
yes.
and we learn our lessons in one lifetime, we get it right, and then we go to the next lifetime. So everybody, I would think, who wants to really do like make a success out of their lives, because there's different kinds of successes like monetary and whatnot. But I think the true success is being enlightened. And if you're enlightened, then you go on to the next life if you're truly enlightened. So this is part of my journey towards enlightenment, I hope, is having the humility, teaching, resilience under very difficult situations.
Right.
Um,
But let me ask you, because this is the real and the woo, right? So, in terms of your journey towards enlightenment, So again, we met on the yoga mat. Yoga doesn't always indicate people are there for spiritual reasons. They're there for physical reasons. We get the spiritual maybe in the back door, or we seek it on the mat. Did you already have some sort of spiritual rituals or practices that brought you into a sense of peace prior to your incident? And has anything changed, transformed, increased since that you'd like to share?
Like I said, that inner voice that would kind of malign me is gone.
Mm.
And that happened after this whole tragedy. That's number one. And number two, I was always a deep thinker, very deep thinker. Was I going to yoga for the spirituality? Maybe just to feel good. I always just wanted to feel good. And I thought yoga felt good. And I'm kind of bummed. I've kind of switched over to Pilates because yoga's too hard for me with the down dogs and stuff.
Yeah,
And I like that, what's it called? The flow.
the flow, the vinyasa flow.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
the vinyasa. Like that's part of what I loved about yoga. I loved feeling that out of your body experience.
The movement of the breath and the connection of your breath is obviously what's part of the peace that we find on and off the mat. And so whether you do Pilates or do your tennis or go for bike rides, you're connecting your breath to your body as you can. I would also say there's plenty of other classes. I mean, I'm happy to work with you too, just the no dogs class, right? But I wanted to touch on something.
Where are you teaching now?
I do privates and I do groups, and I'm working still for studios as well. So I'm for hire and I'm also an employee. Yeah.
Okay.
But I wanted to, when I was reading the bio just of your book, I specifically wrote down, you mentioned that your story will serve as a reminder of what is real and important in life, right? And I found that interesting that you separated real and important. Most times people will say, I found out what was really important, but you took time to say what was real and important. And I don't know if I'm just catching that or it was intentional. And if so, I'd love you to explain why you sought to separate those two things out.
Friendship, a deep friendship, a loving friendship, you could tell if it's real or not. And I'm surrounded by that. I have so many good friends and deep friendships. So that to me is real and important. I still think relationships and love are probably money, surviving, and your relationships and your love. Those are two important things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I read it at face value, but I also just wondered sometimes when I see words like that, I wonder if there's a backstory of situations that you found that you thought were real, but because of your tragedy, you realize that was kind of false, whether it was a person, place, thing, and I'm sure
The only thing I would like to say is, everybody has a story and everybody has a trauma, and some we don't see and some we see. And I don't want to live in my trauma. I want to do great in spite of it or with it. And I don't want to live in the space where I'm perpetually behind or suffering or poor Penny. I just want people to go, great, she's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
How athletic of her, whatever, and move on.
Right.
So for me, I think the less you focus on the trauma and the more you focus on the good and going forward, you're just going to feel better. That's the biggest thing I'd like to impart, is that we don't have to live in victimhood. We don't have to live in our trauma. We owe it to ourselves and our kids to kind of get on with it. There's such a victim mentality these days. I feel like people aren't just getting on with things fast enough.
Right.
I know everybody has a different time and space and how they handle it, but I choose not to live in that crappy time.
Right. And like you said, everybody's got a different timeline for getting over and getting on and moving on. And the victimhood obviously is human. It's natural. And how you got over it and get over it, you were already wired to, it sounds like. Whereas there's other people who really, it's a total blind side. They don't have the inner wiring that allows the gumption to come through and that positive attitude to come through as quickly as it sounds like you were able to. And so that's tremendous. And like you said, you were probably already wired to handle something like this.
Super independent, because I had loving parents, but they weren't effective. I had to figure everything out on my own, which is fine. I came from a different time and place. I'm older than I look, and I grew up in Evanston, and I was more, a teen in the 70s. It's so long ago. So we had a different parents parented differently. They weren't as involved. And there was a lot of hard stuff to figure out, but I think that gave me a little bit of that temerity.
Like I was born in 65, so I grew up with
Oh, you look young too.
parents as hippies and siblings as hippies, and
Yeah.
right. So
Very different.
my tenacity comes from my upbringing also, because my parents got divorced when I was young, and I had to learn how to fix things. Otherwise, they didn't get fixed because we were living close to poverty for a while. Our backstories definitely inform our current stories 100%. So thank you for sharing that. My lens is the chakras, as you may or may not know. And so part of the questions I wanted to go through was to sort of take you through that journey with your journey. So if I may, the root chakra is our sense of stability, security. It's literally our foundation. So right off the bat, you lost your physical foundation. You could not stand, right? Your muscles atrophied. Your home base, because of your divorce, also was altered. Your family structure was changed. Would you like to discuss that at all?
It's funny because it's sad, honestly. So my book outlines all the disasters that I went through in my life. And in a way, that prepared me for the biggest disaster. Like, I didn't have the illusions that life was going to be easy. It was just never easy. And so I just didn't expect things to be easy. So they were hard and whatever. Unfortunately, my ex-husband passed away. And that was actually one of the hardest things we've all been through, because my kids were shattered and I had to live through that and see all that. It was sad. It was sad what happened to my ex-husband. Sometimes, like in the book, there were a lot of shocking things that he said and did that were so insensitive. But sometimes I think, he died of a brain tumor. And I think some of that was brought on by the insanity of a brain tumor. And it was attached to his pituitary gland. So when he started receiving hormones for his pituitary gland, he got to be a more normal, nice person. So unfortunately, he had to live with some of the mistakes that he made that I don't even know if he understood that he was making those mistakes at the time.
Interesting.
So why am I talking about this? I hung in there knowing I was right. I didn't allow myself to be gaslit, and I kept my kids protected, but I also allowed them to see their dad as he was. If they wanted to spend time with them, great. If they didn't want to, great. It was more up to them. But they struggled. It was too many changes in a short period of time. I'm more worried about them than I am about me and the outcomes, because first they went through their mom that they worshiped, looking like a skeleton cadaver and being so sick. And I'm sure I was so grumpy, although I tried to be so sweet, whatnot. And then they dealt with their dad kind of leaving us. He really, in the beginning, didn't stick around much. And they had just begun, my son had just begun high school. So he went through a rough chat, whatever your kids struggle with, you struggle with 10 times.
Yeah.
So as long as they're good, I'm good. And we're still dealing with the outcome and the fallout. It's a lot. It's been a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. So your new sense of your home base, your home structure, your stability, you literally picked yourself up and made that happen. And then the second chakra, the sacral chakra, is our sense of passion and joy and sexuality and sensuality. And so would you like to talk about that part of your recovery journey, like how you had to sort of relearn maybe what brought you passion, how to allow yourself to experience a sexual relationship again after, you touched on it with dating, but was that something that was easy or hard?
It was obviously hard. I think we go out with different people for different reasons. And I had 3 very different relationships, and each one filled a need at the time. Right now I'm single and I'm kind of loving it. I have no desire to get back up and out there. I tried pushing myself, but it felt like more of a chore than a real. So right now my passion is learning, cuddling with my dogs, my daughter. And I read like I'm a scholar 8 hours a day. This war in Israel and the October 7th took me to another place. And I was reading, I I feel like I'm an expert on all things Middle East now because
Mm.
I've just been a student for the last 8 years. And that's where my passion and mental growth has been, is just learning, 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 and like looking at new perspectives.
What's the most out there piece of knowledge you sought to research or learn about these last 8 years that surprised you, that you didn't think you maybe even wanted to get interested in, you know?
Well, I saw how the news was being covered by the mainstream media, most particularly BBC and CNN. So I started doing my own research, and that's really how I got to be so studious. I mean, I was always a reader. I was
Mhm.
always a big reader and writer. But after I saw that they were spinning the narrative, and I realized I could spin the narrative,
Mhm.
I just told you I spun the narrative that I had positive things coming out of this terrible thing. So there's always ways to spin the narrative, but I didn't like what I saw. And so I did my own research. So I guess that was illuminating to know that you really have to read it all,
Yeah.
not just the current, but you have to read the history and know how we got here.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of trickery going on,
There's,
unfortunately.
yeah. Well, and you're going up the chain on your own. So the solar plexus chakra is our seat of confidence, personal power, willpower, and it's how we use or abuse our power with ourselves or other people. And so it's fascinating that you knew enough to say, I'm not getting the information that I'm thinking I'm getting. I'm going to take charge and
Take
use
charge.
my power, empower myself to find the truth that I feel is true. So that's huge, right?
And having enough confidence and liking yourself enough to say, you know what, I feel like I've got this, and I know what I'm talking about. And somebody wants to yell at me or not yell at me, or people are so quick to argue, but they're not even vetted on what
Listening.
they're arguing about. I
Yeah.
mean, it's really, I think the most shocking and troubling, other than obviously the torture and the mayhem that happened on October 7th, was the lack of knowledge and the believing whatever they heard, the last thing they heard. And I just started thinking, we're in trouble because I think the colleges and our education has failed us just like the news did.
Yeah. Well, learning to discern information for ourselves and being critical thinkers and um,
Critical thinking, that's what I'm
critical
trying to
thinker.
say.
Yeah.
I feel that critical thinking is not being used enough, and it's
It's not,
really sad.
it's not being supported. It's not being taught. And
Critical thinking is your instincts. Like, that's the most important thing
that's your gut.
out there. How
That's
did
your
we lose that?
Well, there's we could have a whole other show about that. But in terms of this conversation too, healthy debate and civil discourse has also
Left the room.
left the room. So I feel and I know there will be a correction. Right now we're in a pendulum swinging the other way. We can all feel it. And each of us is doing what we can. With you, it's doing your own research and speaking your truth and doing it with respect for people who don't believe the way you believe, I would imagine. And that's part of the heart chakra that we're getting into, is how you relate to others is how you start relating to yourself. It all starts with ourself, and your innate sense of tenacity, confidence, self-love, and empowerment translates outwardly, right? So you're a connector. Are on the board that you said, you speak about your journey every time you impart that message with your throat chakra, right? What you say and how you've expressed yourself in your writing is connecting from your heart. And what I love about your story too is you've learned enough to know that this is your story. Not everybody has to embrace it, believe it, want to read it, but you're not going to throw them out with the bathwater just because they don't. You've learned at the intuitive mind in our crown chakra, our literal connection to spirit and our soul. You've learned we're all souls and we all have value and a reason for being here. And so I just love that your journey really does speak to the journey we're all in. And I hope to really understand ourselves at a profound level, why we behave and feel and believe the way we do, and learn to have the confidence and self empowerment to make changes when we're no longer aligned with the versions that we were, right?
You know what's
Life
so
gave
funny?
you that. It said, Penny, we're going to take you out and you're going to rewrite the version of yourself, right? And
Yeah.
and you've already said like that part of it is a gift for you. And I love that you're talking about it.
But it's funny because I was always this person. I was always deep. I was always challenging certain thoughts. I was always intellectually, I wasn't maybe the best student, but I was always very intellectually interested.
Mm-hmm.
And a prolific reader. And I remember like cousins that I'd been close with, like my California cousins that I spent every winter and summer with. They were like, I thought you were just the pretty girl that didn't have any substance. I'm like, it took me having a crash like this for you to realize that I'm a person inside. So, in a weird way, I think the doctor overlooked me because I looked healthier than I felt. Like sometimes you're just judged by your appearance, good or bad. I wanted to get myself back to base one where I felt like my old self for me, not for anybody else. Feels good to be me. And I could look at myself and recognize myself. But I think not everything is what it appears to be. You have to look a little deeper. And it's not even that hard. You look, like you said, critical thinking. You just look beneath the layer, like maybe two rungs down, maybe not one rung down.
Well, people present often with fear because of their own insecurity.
That's how I learned. It's just on them. Yeah.
Yeah. And you started off our conversation pretty much saying what's coming to mind to readdress is you were like having a rebirth. Like you literally had to learn from babyhood to adulthood all over again, how to walk, how to eat, how to breathe. And you really did build yourself up, like you said, some of your parts in pieces, one piece at a time, one step at a time, one breath at a time. And thank you for sharing your story with everyone. And
for hearing it.
What's next for you?
I swear, I don't know. I wish I knew. I love doing public speaking. I love doing venues. I just don't have an agent. Don't know how to, like, the reason why I did a lot of public speaking when the book came out is because I was invited to. Like, I don't know who to go to, where to go with it. I tried to become, a disability model. Like, it would make me happiest to just stay in this niche that I'm doing. I just have to make more of a career. I don't see another book, but I do love writing. I love speaking. I love teaching. I love it all. Reading.
I would say perhaps going back to like the school district model and see if you can speak and inspire, in any way that way.
I like that.
There's lots of also, there's a gajillion professional women's groups just in our area. Plugging into that, maybe sponsoring an event with your books in the back to sell and talk about your story. Going to where you find your joy and passion, maybe tennis club, maybe yoga studio, things that you already like and enjoy. Perhaps you can leverage your experiences there as you were and as you are now and talk about those things too. Like communities you're already plugged into will embrace you no matter what.
I was going to say, like, if I were to say my biggest message is probably if you have self-love, it's like a shield to protect you. And I agree with you. I like your idea. That was like a light that went off. If I could talk to kids at the more malleable time in their lives, so many people have that rotten voice in their head.
Right.
And it's so diminishing.
It's
How do you
diminishing
get rid of
no
it?
matter your ability or disability, just learning. And that's what I do is my mission is to help everyone understand they matter. Full stop, period. And how I do it is how I do it with my workshops and speaking and healing and all the things and teaching. And we're all sharing that energetic pot together. Your story is your story, my way is my way. But together, I hope that we can make an impact that inspires and unites and gets people curious about what makes them tick.
And the other thing I was going to say is, there's a lot of people that don't know how to make friendships. They're shy, they're insecure, whatever. And one of the messages in my book is it never hurts to say hi. And like you can create your own community. Like I remember when we did sell the family home and we lived in an apartment building that was kind of like depressing. A lot of people went there after their divorce. I made a little community, even though it was like not my normal community, the doorman or the lady who was selling the apartments or whatever. You can make your own little community just by being polite and friendly and like empathetic, because it
Being
is
pol-
hard for, it's easy for me to say, oh, just have self-love and share a community and whatever. And some people struggle with that. And that's where
right.
the loneliness comes in. But if you can take the first step and just say hi to people on the street, you're going to get some good back.
You're going to get some good back, and looking people in the eyes, holding a door. We talked about just common courtesy and civility, little things like that, but again, I think we take for granted that we're going to extend an olive branch, whereas other people wait to grab it, right? Not everybody has the confidence to even look at somebody and smile. And so if we can just start helping people understand they have every right to be here, no matter where their here is, and start there, that they have value where they are, then they wouldn't necessarily be intimidated by people like us, because I've experienced this. I'm sure you have. Confident women are not very well received in some circles because of the insecurity in the other women.
Well, that's what happened to me when I first moved to Highland Park and I took my kids to preschool. And some of those women that were like, and I never had a hard time with this. I never worried about that kind of stuff, but I worried because I had kids and we weren't being accepted and they couldn't get play dates, whatever. And I always knew who I was, so I couldn't understand. And I never had a hard time. You'll see in my book, I lived a lot of different places. I lived in Asia. I lived in Paris, like the hardest societies there were to crack. I lived there. I made friends. I enjoyed it. And then I had a harder time in Highland Park with the kids. But, your kids are obviously your weakness. So the bottom line is a lot of the women that had been rude to me wrote me letters when I was in the hospital and said, I'm sorry I didn't get to know you. You always smiled. You always seemed positive. It was intimidating. I was like, okay. But they're still my friends. Some of those women, I've embraced that. I thought they were good for them, that they were bigger people, that they could admit that. And we've moved on, and hopefully they're more confident now. I don't know.
You just said something, and I want to get to a place where positivity is not intimidating. Like, isn't that a ridiculous thing?
I mean, they were saying like you'd come, and I'm telling you, like right now I'm wearing my sweats, but I'm wearing a cute sweater and I'm showered. I didn't do anything remarkable, but I got like hate because I showered that day.
Right.
So why should they hate that? Like, who the hell cares?
Well, it's because of their own mishigas, their own internal wiring that says,
and I had never met people like that before. I was just like,
yeah,
okay.
It's fascinating. And you know what? Honestly, I'm so happy that A, those women wrote to you. B, you're the kind of woman who received them and believed them. And C, that you've repaired that relationship, because not everybody gets that chance, right? It's the first impression or second impression and people are done. And that's unfortunate too. That's a whole other show. But I love so much about your story. And again, having known you from before and not knowing you very well at all, I'm just like, oh, there's that pretty girl who knows so and so and so and so, and she's doing yoga and I'm doing yoga. Thank you for sharing your story. There's so many nuggets. You guys go grab her book. Tell everybody again how to find you, your socials, your book. Do you have a website?
It's Aftershock by Penny Fisher. It's on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. If you want to physically go pick up one, it's at the book bin in Northbrook and the one in Lake Forest, but then it's also online. And I do have a website that is all my articles that I've written, like my op-eds for like Cosmopolitan. I was on Steve Harvey. So a lot of those clips are on there. So it's under Penny Fisher, my name, one.com.
Okay.
So it's pennyfisher1.com or Aftershock by Penny Fisher.
Okay.
So please and I'm buy my books.
Yeah, I'm going to put everything in the show notes. And if you have any socials you want to share, I will put those in there too. Penny, I wish you a wonderful part of your journey as it may continue and unfold as it is.
Oh, and that is another lesson, one day at a time. Because if you start thinking about the future, you will go crazy.
Yes.
Because there's so much you can't control. So just deal in the now, take it one day at a time, and try to relax.
All right. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.